Sanibona, ngaphambi singene kwivideo namuhla, ngithi angithathe lethuba ngibonge i-support nothando enikhombise lona lingaphezu kokucabanga kwethu. Siyacela niqhubeke nisupporte njalo ngokubuka amavideo ethu, ungakhohlwa ukukhomenta, ushare, ulike. Siyafisa ukuzwa umbono wakho. Sicela ke singene kwivideo namuhla. Odabeni esike sakhuluma ngalizolo udaba oluthinta amanzi. Lapho esicaphune khona uMama Khawula ekhuluma ngokungafunctioni komasipala. Ukuthi i-Department ye-Water and Sanitation yona elawula amadamu isiwenzile umsebenzi wayo, mase sekufuna kusuke lapho sekuyiwa komasipala utholakala ukuthi abantu okuyibona abanenkinga okugcina benza ukuthi amanzi angafiki ebantwini omasipala bebambisene ne-department yakakhokta. So ngibona ukuthi asiphinde sicaphune olunye udaba la elake lakhulunywa kwi-portfolio committee. Umama Khawula wakwakuveza ngaphambilini ukuthi i-department le yamanzi ayi-ownwa ugovernment 100%. Amanzi esinawo la eSouth Africa ingxenye yawo i-privatize isezandleni zabantu abathize. Kodwa ke umbuzo othi lokho kwenzeka kanjani? Ngifisa ukuza naleyo mpendulo. Into engiyesabayo nje ukuthi gazi nizoyibuka le video na. Yanansi into engiyesabayo ngoba la ma-topic esiwakhulumayo athanda ukuba serious, awavamisanga ukuba nabantu abaningi abawabukayo. Abantu abaningi balandela umgosi. So angazi kodwa ngithatha nje chance. Ngibonile ivideo ye-EFF rejecta ibudget yakwakhokta. Ngiyafisa nayo ukuyifaka ibe ingxenye yevideo kodwa ngisasaba nje ukuthi gazi nizoyibuka na ngoba ekugcineni kosuku i-YouTube it's a game of numbers. Ukuze nami kube khona engikutholayo fanele ngibe nama-views. Nisizwa sicela ama-donation akungoba sifuna ukuqola abantu, ingoba i-YouTube i-aware ukuthi ayisibhadali ngokwanele. So ingakho ikuvumela kusemthethweni, ingakho ikuvumela ukuthi asifafake ama-account sicela ama-donation. Angidluleke ngene odabeni. Njengoba i-portfolio committee bihlangene lapha bagcine beza nesisombululo sokuthi imali ephuma kuhulumeni eyi-budget eza kuma-department ayenele ukuze kukwazi ukukhaveka zonke iy'dingo. Base bethi cha, beza nohlelo manje ukuthi akubolekwe. Usho ukuthi abayithole le mali ezovela kuhulumeni bese bephinde futhi bephuma beyoboleka. Ilapho-ke ezoqala khona ukuvela ukuthi igcine ifika kanjani ukuthi amanzi a-own abe-privatize, ingxenye yawo ibe-privatized, igcine ingasalawulwa uhulumeni. Ngifisa ukukucaphunela-ke uReady lo we-MK Party lapho ezokhuluma khona ngalezi zinto lezi nanomthelela owenzakalayo uma sekwenzekile lokho. Mhlambe sizomcaphuna uminister eshisa iside lakhe.
Honorable Chairperson, Minister, and everyone present. I want to speak to my colleagues, the honorable members that are sitting here. From the presentation, I can tell you that I am more concerned now than I was before. In fact, I want to agree with Honorable Moore's concerns as well as Honorable Ngumalo's concerns. They are valid. And basically what the department is saying is that it wants to create an entity to borrow more money. Colleagues, are you aware that in our country, we are paying 1.2 billion rands per day to service debt? And the government, the debt currently sits at 22% of revenue. So what we're doing is creating an entity that says, let's bypass Treasury now because we're not getting enough money from Treasury. Let's create our own entity that will have the power to go and borrow more money. But here is the concern. You know, what we're doing is we are using our water infrastructure like dams as collateral. We're using it as collateral, national assets as collateral to secure these loans. And the reality is that, and if you look at what has been said by my colleagues here, issues like municipalities owing billions to water boards and struggle with payment backlogs, You hear about the increase in non-revenue water. You hear about tariff recovery rates that are declining. All of this points to the fact that the biggest risk that we face is that our national assets are going to become controlled by lenders. Now, I want to share something with you. Two things. One, when we formed the interim eThekwini municipality, I served there. The executive committee went overseas to France, and there were companies in France that were keen to come over and use our assets as collateral and give us all the money we want. But when we analyzed this very carefully and we saw what they did in the rest of Africa, we realized that the sovereignty of these countries were actually given away. Because once they take control of your assets, by the way, they came up with very low rates, tariff rates. And then we said, once we are unable to meet that demand, they will then impose their own tariffs. It's out of our control. We cannot subject our people to this. You know, running a water business, it's like, think about it. Everybody needs water. And if we can't make a business successful out of selling water, then I don't think there's anything in this world that we can make a success of. Because water is something that every human being needs. And yet, in this business model, we are finding that we are constantly have to borrow money. I am not convinced, Honorable Chairperson, that to create this model to borrow more money is going to solve our problem, especially when I'm not convinced that we're not closing the holes in the way money is being lost in this department. That is the reality. And the truth of the matter is, when eThekwini rejected the model to finance Umkomazi Dam, I was there. I was a member of the board of Umgeni. I was also a member of the Committee of Infrastructure in eThekwini. And I led the charge to oppose these increases because it was exorbitant, the cost to be able that's being transferred to the consumer. Now, it's easy for us, and I appreciate, and I want to honestly appreciate the department's role in trying to manage its books. What it does is it looks at the laws, it simply looks at laws, and that's about it. But we, and I'm speaking to my colleagues here, we are representing the people of South Africa. We have their interests at heart. We don't necessarily look at the law. We don't necessarily look at how we're going to balance the books, but we've got to be realistic. Can people afford? Because that's where you're expecting the money to come from. And when you don't get that money, then I'm afraid that our infrastructure, like dams, which we are using as collateral to secure these loans, they will get into the ownership of the lenders. And that is my fear. We can't sell away our national assets, Honorable Minister. That's something we cannot do. Thank you very much.
Laba babezibuza ukuthi kwenzeka kanjani ukuthi amanzi noma amanzi agcine se-ownwa ama-private companies noma amazwe. Impendulo ngicabanga sesiyitholile ukuthi uma bephuma beyothatha ama-loan basenza la madamu nale infrastructure as i-collateral bese bebaboleka-ke imali. Kodwa inkinga esinayo eSouth Africa ila ma-leaks akhona. Ilokuthi imali yaphuma minyaka yonke idliwe la phakathi nendawo ugcina ungasenzeki umsebenzi. So into ekhathaza uReady la ukuthi nakho imali siphumile bese iyadleka la phakathi nendawo kuzokwenzeka kanjani ngoba ekugcineni kosuku labaya bazobe sekuyibona abalawula lamadamu njengoba kukhona anjalo la eSouth Africa. Iphuzu leli ngilibonela libalekile ngoba sathi masikhuluma le ndaba ngokudlula esikhathi uMamkhawule iveza iconcern yabakhona kubantu kodwa sonke sangaba nalo ulwazi lokuthi kwenzeke kanjani kwenzeka futhi kanjani. Manje sesitholile ukuthi uma bephuma beyoboleka kuba naleyo nkinga. Siyazi ukuthi omasipala bethu banenkinga ukukoloda imali eziningi nabo bagcine behluleka ukucollect imali. Uma besahluleka kuse omasipala bebodwa nje kunama leaks. Isizathu esenza lokho ukuthi kuzo zonke izinto ezenzekayo akuboshwa umuntu ufika athola itender yokwakha infrastructure ethize noma ukufaka amapayipi athize noma ukulungisa ini, lawo bantu labo bayenze leyo project bayishiye phakathi badle imali bangaboshwa bengajezi. Ekugcineni kosuku bakhokhelwe bona nama-resources asebenze lapho kuleyo project engaphelile akhokhelwe. Iphume lapho kube khona abakuthiwa ama-water tank mafias, nabo futhi kunengxenye yemali abazoyithatha ngoba bayakwazi futhi ukudamaja iphayiphi bona ukuze bezokwazi ukuthi bathole umsebenzi, baphinde bathathe imali futhi bona bahambisele abantu amanzi. Yizo zonke lezi zinto eziyinkinga ezenza ukuthi ubone ukuthi uma sisahluleka isahluleko omasipala, isahluleka i-department ukuholda omasipala accountable, ukwenza sure ukuthi omasipala bayakwazi ukuthi whatever imali investwe kubo bayi-generate back, ibuye ikwazi ukufunctiona kahle. Uzoyithatha kanjani loan ezobe seyirequire ukuthi ikhokhele ngempela? Ngoba phela lana iyatolerate lento yokungakhokhelwa kahle kwelo komasipala. Ngicabanga ukuthi iyatolerate ngoba azikho iy'nyathelo ey'nqala ezithathwayo. Asidluleke, ngifisa ukucaphuna i-EFF i-reject ibudget yakwa-COGTA. Emveni kwayo-ke sobe sesiyivala iveri, kodwa ngiyafisa ukuzwa ukuphala kwakho ngalolu daba ngoba luyasithinta lolu daba ngoba baningi abantu abangenawo amanzi. Izathu ezenza ukuthi angabikho amanzi omasipala. Bona omasipala njengoba abanye baphethwe i-department yaka-COGTA, abaka-COGTA okuyibona abaphethwe omasipala. Asizwe ukuthi itheni EFF.
Who has 20 minutes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces. Greetings to the Minister, greetings to the DM, the DG of Traditional Affairs, honorable members. The reality is that both the Department of Cooperative Governance and the Department of Traditional Affairs have experienced budget cuts. DCOG has seen a baseline reduction of 1.3 billion, with an overall reduction of 15.8 billion over the midterm, impacting provincial and local government conditional grants. The Department of Traditional Affairs also faced budget reduction of 5.8 million, a further marginalization of a department through which our people interact with government. Government does this due to fiscal constraints and the need for fiscal consolidation. And we know, and you can go on to research, honorable members, as to what are these two concepts prompted by in terms of the international conglomerates that have controlled South Africa since their arrival in South Africa in 1652, and the Dutch East India companies in terms of development and underdevelopment and perpetual underdevelopment of local government, and therefore the amount of monies that are allocated, prompting that local government must continue to be underdeveloped, and uneven underdevelopment that is perpetual is prompted to a larger extent by those monies that we owe elsewhere, and this is hence these two concepts. And then then we must convey our heartfelt condolences to the 102 lives that have been lost as a result of a reactional system and a chronic institutional failure. You know, our people must not fail, must never be made to bear the brunt of an institutional failure in South Africa. Must never. If a system fails, it must continue to deliver to its people. Chairperson, the EFF, and therefore, Chairperson, we actually applaud the intervention of the Commander-in-Chief of the Emancipation Movements and the progressive king in King Willem Ekaya, who did not react, who actually did not react, but was preemptive in their approach in terms of directly being in contact with the victims. And that should be the approach of a government that is caring, to say the least. Chairperson, the EFF rises on this difficult debate of the budget vote of the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to express our deepest disappointment and revolutionary anger at the continued betrayal of the masses of our people by this failing government. The state of local government in this country is no longer a crisis, but a humanitarian disaster. Chairperson, just last month, the Auditor General released the audit findings of local government for the financial year 2023-2024 fin year. And as the EFF, we are vindicated in our criticism, as it is now evident that for all to see that there is no improvement in local government. The majority of municipalities have collapsed as challenges in local government remain. Despite several engagement and advocacy year after year, the collapse of municipalities signifies the collapse of service delivery, water infrastructure, roads and sanitation infrastructure. In terms of Section 10 of the Constitution, it cannot be, Chairperson, accepted at this point in time that we're still speaking to this issue of sanitation, of the lack of sanitation, because South Africa is coming from a difficult past in terms of the lack of dignity. What is more concerning to note is how the collapse of local government is deliberate and is made possible by underfunding. Unless the fiscal framework is revived, local government will continue on the downward path of collapse. We therefore reject the budget of COGTA as this department, like many others, stands as a victim and an instrument of the neoliberal austerity project of the 7th administration. Minister, the department must expedite the decentralization of the offices of the MDB to avoid surprises in the delimitation of wards like they did in 2021. This is to directly be in contact with our people. Ensuring institutional capacity in municipalities, institutional memory to guard against staff turnover. MISA must effectively deal with the recruitment and the insourcing of artisan engineers from TVET colleges, particularly in the rural provinces like Mpumalanga. Municipalities in our oversight of Free State found the so-called ratepayers. The ratepayers who are white. The chairperson will attest that these people do not want to invest in the municipality, yet they want the municipalities in Kopanong to be viable. So there is no sense of self-contradiction from a point of view of arrogance of being white and a ratepayer in a municipality, whereas there are other people who have been deprived. You come as a ratepayer and you say, I'm not going to go, and you can do that you can take your money to Switzerland and other areas. I think that the democratic process. But weak municipal infrastructure and inability of MMCs must be looked at to deal with the need to strengthen the infrastructure in municipalities. Chairperson, austerities through numerous cuts below inflation allocations across department and its entities are a cause for harm and basic services, which adversely impacts the lives of our people. And as the EFF, we have stood here on this platform and many other platforms and denounced the assumption that municipalities are able to collect revenue to fund essential services. The assumption is false and misleading, as the majority of our municipalities are not financially viable. The assumption that municipalities will somehow miraculously fund essential services is misguided, must be properly represented in the review of the white paper on local government to increase allocations from 9.5% to 14% of the fiscus to municipalities, increasing allocations to 88.4 billion of the revenue raised nationally, thus reflecting the satisfaction of the needs of the people than the satisfaction of the markets and commodification of services. Secondly, we reject the budget as it expects municipalities to perform miracles without resources, while being responsible for over 30% of the service delivery mandates, including water, sanitation, roads, refuse removal, disaster and emergency services, and human settlement support. The 2023-2024 MFA audit outcomes also paints a bleak picture, and more than 4 billion was spent on consultants, many of whom duplicate the work of internal staff. We were shocked by the findings that state that municipalities spend significant financial resources in hiring consultants to assist them with preparing financial statements for audit. In 2023-2024, 219 municipalities spent a combined 1.47 billion on financial reporting consultants, with 130 of these municipalities still submitting financial statements that had errors in the areas where consultants did work, indicating that the spend was not effective. Additionally, ghost employees drain the public purse, while action plans to address audit findings repeat the same mistakes and fail to deal with the root causes. Municipal tenders are awarded to family members, friends, and politically connected individuals, and in some instances, councillors are often found with their hands in the cookie jar by the Auditor General, a clear demonstration that cronyism and nepotism remain systemic. Chairperson, local government loses billions of rands each year because of poor decision-making by this department, coupled with neglect and corruption. We therefore plead with SALGA, as the representative body of local government, to carefully monitor the irregularities committed by councillors, political and administrative meddling. The municipal standard charts of accounting compliance and the review and the annual review of the integrated development plans. SALGA must advocate for public blacklisting of serially non-compliant contractors who harm service delivery time frames of completion of projects, fully adhering to the project's life cycle that is coupled with project monitoring and evaluation to track quality and value for money. Furthermore, Chairperson, we register a concern at how municipalities are continuously trapped in court cases and drowning in debt, while the 62.4 billion, which is owed to municipality by government departments and the private sector, could deliberately be utilized to offset the debt payment or settlement to ESCOM and water boards. It is of great concern that the disaster response is also collapsing due to the significant decreases as climate change, flooding, and fires become more frequent in municipalities across the country. In Ligwa, Govenbeki, Dr. J.S. Muroka, Tabashweu, Dipali Singh, Sukaligwa local municipalities in Mpumalanga, the state of Section 139 provincial intervention is a stark improvement. What is more tragic is that, under the watchful eye of the minister, corruption has been institutionalized. Through tender interference in municipalities such as Dipali Singh local municipality, where there is currently an investigation of 53.8 million irregular payment and a 100 million loss tied to corrupt tender corruption. These matters are highly concerning, Chairperson, as they are root causes of the unwanted expenditures, which harm the financial health and stifle the service delivery of residents. In Mpumalanga, for 2024, 6 municipalities are officially under distress, showing political instability and administrative failure, while 5 are formally under Section 139 administration due to institutional collapse that cannot be used against residents. In the face of all challenges faced, the EFF recommends municipalities must insource all workers and stop outsourcing water, waste, and security services, and therefore commodify what is a constitutional right of our people. Minister, end the use of consultants for basic services. Employ municipal engineers, planners, artisans permanently. Zone land for industrial parks owned by municipalities. Establish municipal land redistribution units. Lead a corrupt, free, and accountable government without fear of victimization by the state agencies. Build state and government capacity, which will lead to the abolishment of tenders. Localized industrialization to create sustainable jobs. Self-sufficient and self-sustaining municipalities. Support traditional traders with trading spaces, storages, and finance, as municipalities must buy locally, hire locally, and ban tenders to relatives and of councillors and staff. In terms of vote 15, amakhwenkwe ndiyawabona afuna ukweluka, afuna ungena kwicala le-DA, ayombela wayachocha amakhwenkwe ngapha ngasentla kwaRentawule. Sizawasa ke ngoku thina xa ethatha le platform afika athethe ipolitics zawo apha angathethi kwi-governance. Siyakwazi ukuyenza loo nto, sinawo amakhosi akwazi uyenza loo nto. Furthermore, Chairperson, traditional affairs cannot be allowed to get a reduction at any time. I mean, the traditional leadership is government, actually. And our people interact with them all the time in terms of their needs, in terms of land, in terms of the allocation, in terms of the services, in terms of the programs of the department, in terms of dispute resolution, in terms of everything that has to deal with that institution. And therefore, we propose that having reported deaths of over 400 initiates, Section 11, Chairperson of the Constitution, guarantees the right to life in terms of the Bill of Rights. And the minister will lobby you that you must act, and you must act firmly in terms of securing the lives of our children who are going through this passage. And by establishment of what we call National Initiation Regulatory Authority, which will require health inspectors, trained session, and real-time monitoring as way of capping deaths of initiates. We are also concerned about the lack of standardization of salaries and benefits for kings, queens, and traditional. Let me speak to this just a bit, Minister. You know, a king, if in a village, and if in a village, kusweleke abantwana, and therefore you are left with a child head at home, abo bantwana ngabe king. Kutheni ke ngoku, and then that king has to take over, right, that household and adopt those children and take them to school. Where is the money that's going to be dedicated to these children when they go to universities? Why is it that you are not scrapping because the kings are not flying all the time? So we're going to speak very passionately about it because we are from traditional communities and we are here because of them. And therefore the human value, which is not a speculative value, like money, Chairperson. The human value says that the teachers that taught you, the traditional leaders that grew you, that groomed you up, the doctors that made you feel alive today, is this because of human value that must be safeguarded for the satisfaction of the needs of people over markets and commodification of the needs of the people. It can't be that a government, every time we are dealing with matters, it must tenderize an issue. It can't be that every time we are having a disaster, then there's tenders that should be issued out in terms of that disaster, as though the government is eating on the pain. Therefore, the department must give us a report in terms of the last disaster of the Eastern Cape. They must give us a report on the irregularities that they found. They must give us a report in terms of what consequences, so that every time this government does something, is tenders, what am I going to benefit about it? Whereas people must benefit, must be at the forefront of the advancements of a developmental state. Please, thank you very much.
Yona video le bengithi angulethele yona ichaze kabanzi nanokuthi kungani be rejecta le budget. Angifisi kodwa uma silalela lo reject budget sibuka ukuthi ba reject budget ngoba ekugcineni kosuku ibudget ifuneka ibe khona ezobe iye ebantwini. Akungabi sengathi laba ba reject budget ba against transformation, cha. Kodwa laleli izathu ezenza ukuthi bethi ezenza bethi asisupport le budget. Okunye futhi engifisa ukugcina ngakho asibonge kubantu base Eastern Cape. Abantu base Eastern Cape balenzile iqiniso noma besekhona labo abathize, kodwa mawubheka njengoba bekunama by election izolo lapha eEastern Cape ku Ward 57 eMotherwell, iANC ngonyaka ophelile beku 75%. Kodwa kulokhu yehlile to 62%. iEFF ikhuphuke ngo1%. iMK yathola 1% ngama national elections, kodwa manje ikhule ngo15% njengoba iMK party ithole 16%. Khombisa ke ukuthi abantu base Eastern Cape sekufike la inkungu isuka khona emehlweni abo, bebona ukuthi le nqola iANC ayihambi. Ngiyababongela vele ngadumala ngoba iyona ndaba engangingabhekanga ukuthi iANC ingathola amavote amaningi kuyo, ngesizathu sokuyazi ukuthi for 30 years iba neglectile abantu base Eastern Cape ANC. Kodwa ke uma sibona kunoshintsho olunje futhi akafiki la ngijabula khona. Ngisho lokho hayi ngoba ngisupport iEFF, kodwa njengoba bekwehle isigameko leso ukuthi bahlaselwe zikhukhula, inkosi ubuyele ekhaya kumkani Mdalinjebe uzihluphile yena, waphuma yena waye ebantwini, wakhombisa ukuba inkosi, wahambela abantu abaphethe isizweni, wezwe inkinga zabo, wezwe abashoda ngani. Uthe efika uCIC kwafika abakwalotho baxhumana naye, wangasebenzisa indaba ye-political party, kodwa wasebenzisa ukuthi uyinkosi. Ekugcineni kosuku uphethe abantu. Ngibonile izolo bekunepost la bekufike khona ingubo zifikele kuye ukuthi akazidlulisele kubantu aba-affectekile. So ukubona iEFF ikhuphuke ngo1% kusho khona ukuthi abantu bayabona ukuthi nansi inqola ehambayo. Kusho khona ukuthi abantu bayabona ukuthi inkosi le imember phela iEFF, inkosi ekugcineni kosuku. So abalenze nabo iqiniso ngoba bayabona ukuthi uma ngase iEFF bayinika ithuba kukhona inguquko ezingaba khona lapha eEastern Cape. Yazi into esengiyiqaphelile ukuthi siyabagxeka abantu singakaze sabanika ithuba, and kubi lokho. Ngikusho lokhu ngoba iDA ke yaphatha ithwane, kodwa ithwane iqala ukuba right manje isiphethwe iAction SA noma nayi namaqembu abambisene nawo njengo EFF nani, kodwa imeya kuDr Nasiphi Moya wenze omkhulu umehluko. Ngalokho ngizama ukuthi bantu bakithi asingathi i-political party ethize angeke ikwazi ukusilethela ushintsho singakaze sayinika ithuba. Asike siyeke nje ukucabangela ngoba yikho lokho okusenza ukuthi abe-ANC bagange ngathi. Ngicela ukuma la mina nawe sidibane kwivideo elandelayo. Ngiyacela ukuze ukuphala kwakho. Ngiyabonga.